Listeners, welcome back once again to the Lost in Postulation podcast, or should it be the Heinz podcast? Because like Heinz and their delicious ketchup with their 57 varieties, we have 57 episodes for you to choose from, including this very one. Welcome back. And he is a saucy man. He is back on the podcast once again. It is Nicola Volpe. Welcome back.
What a shout to our friends at Kraft Heinz. Thanks for unofficially sponsoring this podcast with each one of your 57 varieties. We are tapping onto that ketchup bottle to get the most postulations out of it as possible.
Maybe not the most favorable metaphor there, that we're like just getting the last few drops of postulations out of this. Let's see if we can come up with a more favorable one. But yes, it is true. We're reaching out an olive branch for unofficial sponsors at all times. So Heinz, please do not hesitate to get in touch. The craft part of Heinz, not so sure I want to talk about. Mac and cheese, not something I want to stand for. But Heinz, I'm all in on. Shout out as well to our great postulatory episode where we ranked the sauces on our Mount Rushmore. That was also huge.
Absolutely. Great shout out there. And you coming from, Ireland, you were exposed to Heinz products that I wasn't exposed to so much in the US because you had even the beans from Heinz.
Yeah, well, Heinz means beans, and the means has a Z, as does the beans. That was one of their big slogans. Not sure if they still use it, but it is one of those pollutants from the UK that has latched onto Irish culture as well, where we do have baked beans on toast and things like that. You'll find beans in an Irish breakfast sometimes as well, which is controversial in my view.
Oh,
But yeah, I'm not against them. It's the type of thing you have in your cupboard for a rainy day that you crack into the beans that have been sitting there for months. But hey, life could be worse. If that's your biggest problem, you're doing okay.
you're doing okay. Shout out to Bryn Watkins, who knows who he is, that would have beans on toast for his dinner around 4 times a week while we were students back in the day. He's from Sheffield, so there you go.
Big man brain, love it.
You love it. And Neil, our listeners keep loving it, keep writing in with their postulations. Please keep doing so at lostinpostulation@gmail.com. You can also find us on our Instagram. That's Lost in Postulation. And on a little thing called X, which I think I've actually forgotten the password to, but that's neither here nor there. That's @InPostulation.
No harm done for getting that password, to be honest. Don't give Elon anything at this point. Don't encourage him.
I haven't heard from him in a while, actually. And I don't mean from him like in our direct correspondence, but about him in the news.
Yeah, well, that's his publicity team working overtime, telling him, please, 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 please stop tweeting things, stop saying things, stop appearing, stop telling advertisers to go fuck themselves, stuff like that. Just basics, kind of like straightforward CEO stuff that you would kind of hope any CEO would do. If you could just do those things, that would be awesome. You're right. I think his PR team has probably been fired and he's hired a new one and they're doing a better job. So good job then.
There you go. Well, they must have just changed all his passwords and are driving him crazy because I think he's still quite trigger happy, probably.
Oh, 100%. He's the same guy as ever. It's just that he's more, he's under a tighter leash than ever before. And it's probably working well, to be fair.
Well, there you go. And Neil, coincidentally, you started the podcast. These intros, so the listeners don't know, we don't share them with each other beforehand. We need to just react. But you talked about bottles, and I want to talk about bottles now in my mundane.
Ooh, how about that? Bottles on the brain. Let's go.
Bottles on the brain. Neil, when was the last time you drank from a plastic bottle?
I'd say it was about 3 days ago. Whenever the last time I took a flight, so that would have been middle of last week. Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Then we're on the same page. Did you notice anything new in the last few months when drinking plastic bottles?
Yes, this old chestnut. Yeah. Let's get into it, but I'm not totally opposed to it. But I did unscrew the bottle, opened it up, put the cap to the side, as is tradition, as is the new way of doing things.
Yes.
And because I'm not completely moronic, I don't shove it into my nose. Like, you can hold the bottle sideways. I don't know why people have such trouble with that. But yes, exactly like you're doing it there for the visual watchers. What is the problem, listeners? So many people are losing their minds about this, saying, I injured my nose. I scratched my nose because of the cap, right?
Mm-hmm.
But let's be adults here. You can turn the bottle sideways. It's not the end of the world.
Yeah, lawsuits await. Maybe that's why it's not going to the US yet, but I noticed this maybe 3-4 months ago that some of them had it on. This attachable cap, listeners, is what we're talking about. Some of them didn't yet, but the EU regulation that came into place, I think it had a deadline of about 1st of July or 30th of June at the time of recording. Now it's everywhere, and I've been on a journey for it. I think it's fine. It's good. In the beginning, I thought they were defective caps because I didn't know the regulation.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, so I kept trying to tear them off, and then it would just create an even greater mess. I
Hmm.
think it's fine. I have no problem with it, except on some yogurt bottles we were discussing with Maria the other day, where some of the yogurt, that dense stuff, stays in there. So when you're trying to get to the bottom of the
Um,
yogurt bottle, you end up getting some on your nose. So she tears it off for those.
okay.
But I don't really grasp the point because I was throwing cap and bottle away together beforehand anyway. So did we
Hmm.
have that many people that were keeping the caps and flinging it at people in the streets or what?
Apparently, I think it's something to do with the recyclability of the caps on their own, that it's much, much easier to recycle the bottle with the cap because it's all the same PET plastic thing that they put through the machine.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the caps just end up in general waste then, and they don't get recycled because it's all mixed in with, the non-recyclable stuff, I think. So to avoid that and to maximize the amount that gets recycled, they're just like, please just keep them together as one. And not everybody is so well behaved as you, I think, when it comes to keeping those caps together,
Apparently not.
including myself. Probably, if I finished the bottle and I had the cap and the bottle in my hand, in each hand, I probably would just be like one, two, just throw them away. So in that sense, it sends a good message, and it's not exactly changing my life in any meaningful way. But I am, as ever, just kind of amused and bemused by the reactions of the general public, which is ranging from mildly annoyed to absolute fury, which is just par for the course these days.
But how hurt can you get from one of these? I mean, like, even if you jam it quite hard against the cartilage on your nose, as I'm doing now,
Yeah,
like,
good demonstration.
and I've hit my nose a lot of times, but like, it's not really
But
hurt.
if you rotate it so that the cap is directly above, right?
Okay.
So, and then get it in there, and then almost a kind of a lever in, like, the way you would open a beer bottle, like if you really get it in there,
Yeah.
I think somebody could do a little scrape on the nose, maybe,
Yeah.
but you'd have to be pushing pretty hard. Like I just don't really see it. I would like someone to explain it, ideally with a video or some kind of a proof that it's possible to injure yourself. But I haven't seen it yet myself. It is annoying, I'll give it that, if you do it wrong, but it's not painful, surely.
Right. Because I mean it's cylindrical. It's a circle here at the top of the cap. So it doesn't matter if you drink it like this
Hmm.
or like this to
Exactly.
avoid that
It's
hitting you. I don't see the difficulty in grasping this.
it's just design genius. It's like manhole covers. I only found this out a few years ago. Do you know why manhole covers are circular?
Manhole covers.
Yeah,
What?
like entrances to sewers in the ground, like in a road and stuff like
Oh,
that. They're
sure.
always circular.
No, I
Yeah.
don't know why. Tell me.
Well, here you go. Because if they were square, it would be possible for the lid to fall down the hole through some different orientation by putting it diagonally, for example. So
Oh,
then a square lid would fall down, and those are very, very heavy. And whoever's at the bottom of it doesn't want a lid falling down on them. Whereas if they're circular, the lid can't fall down in any particular way down the hole, no matter what way it's spun or rotated or anything like that. A beautiful little design choice.
wow.
And the same applies here to the lids of our cap, or our caps of our bottles, which we can just rotate and get them out of the way no matter what.
Wow, what a
Amazing.
concept. You think the
Yeah.
Romans are responsible for that one of the sewers? I would think so.
Yeah, I feel bad for the guy who probably died.
Oh
That
god.
led to the invention, because I'm sure there were. It's probably easier to make square doors, square metal things for holes in the ground. And then, of course, they would have realized, why do we keep having our team be injured by falling manhole covers? And then they said all of that in Latin, obviously, but then they quickly adapted and made circular manhole covers.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. And then that extends all the way to this innovation with the cap. And listeners, write us in. What do you think about the caps? Those of you that are in the EU, those of you that aren't, this is coming for you soon, because we all know the mother of innovation is the European
I,
Union.
Yeah, I feel we're going to have a subset of listeners who are already annoyed about paper straws, and this is going to be, unfortunately, no pun intended, the straw that breaks the camel's back when it comes to drink regulations for them. But interested to hear from them nonetheless. I'd love to have a debate. We can have a phone-in debate with one of the listeners if they really want to defend normal caps and paper straws, or plastic straws.
Do you know who we need on this one? You know whose opinion we need to get? Maybe we can get it live right now from our Brexiteer MP from Northamptonshire.
Nigel Farage. The man, or I mean, we had a fictional MP who I heavily based on Nigel
We
Farage,
did, we
but
did.
it's just these caps it's not even the caps that are the problem. It's EU banana straighteners telling us how to drink our drinks when all I want to do is at the end of a long day when I've been campaigning on the doorsteps, door to door, up and down this country, even not outside my constituency, which I do for some reason, which I can't explain. I just want to drink my diet Pepsi Cola in peace without having to scrape my nose on a plastic bottle cap. Is that too much to ask? I don't know.
Faisal Naraj. ladies
Faisal
and gentlemen.
Naraj. Faisal Naraj sounds like he comes from a different country, and that's very much not in line with the policies he stands for. But hey, look, he's running. He wants to win. Let him do it.
Yeah, ironically enough, he has no qualms about going to other countries to up other friends in other campaigns.
He sure also has no problem supporting Russia in their war. So he's the type of guy I would like to actually give less airtime to than I already have. He's a
Fair.
horrible, horrible individual. But there you go. Hey, look, politics.
We'll have our PR team produce that out, as they would say in the business. But Neil, next up is a little concept you've prepared, and that's coming to you, listeners, right after this break.
Listeners, welcome back once again. I hope you checked in, brought your passport, packed your bags, and gotten ready to travel, because that is what we're going to be doing on this pre-summer episode of Lost in Postulation. We are going abroad, and we're taking you with us to, well, that is the question. And here to answer it is once again Nicola Volpe. Nicola, welcome to Lost in Perambulation, the new segment that I have coined just now.
What an honor to be back. Listeners, the ones viewing on video will have seen my head duck for a bit into my bag. I was actually searching for my passport when you mentioned it, and I couldn't find it. And I'm actually a little concerned because we flew back the other way, and I haven't seen my passport since. So that's something I'm gonna need to get around.
This feeling I know very well. It's always, until you find it, it's the ultimate panic of like, my life is ruined. Mm-hmm. How am I going to do this? Where's the embassy? Where am I going to, just all the worst. And then you always find it, or at least I do. So I believe in you. You'll be okay.
I appreciate it.
But luckily, we're not actually traveling anywhere. You don't need your passport for this particular segment. However, we are going to use your help as a travel expert. And for the listeners who don't know, Nicola is a man of many talents and many professions, one of which is helping people to do what they love and to travel the world in the best way possible. That's something we don't talk about too much on the podcast, but it is something you've been doing for the last while. Isn't that right?
Yes, that is right. Having a blast doing it, Neil. It's allowed me to turn a hobby into a bit of a profession. And also, on this podcast, we've talked significantly about travel, everything from the guys grabbing the back of your chair on the plane to airport etiquette and the like. So it fits, although I have no clue what you've cooked up for this.
Well, sir, I'm not someone who has made use of your services just yet. However, I was thinking I can avail of them for free by making it a feature on today's podcast. Now, only in jest. Don't worry. I'm not actually going to try and wrangle too much of a service out of you today. However, I do need your help because we have been trying to figure out what to do with our 2 weeks that we have free in July, and actually coming up blank so far.
Oh, wow.
And I've tried to, first of all, I can describe a bit the reasons for that as to why we're struggling a bit. But then I also want to broaden this into a general discussion about travel trends in 2024. And I've sourced some bullet points on that. But also, what a great opportunity to get some expertise from a man in the industry like yourself. I thought you could, quote unquote, help me holiday. That's the title of this sub-segment of the episode.
That is what I'm here for, to help you and all of our listeners holiday, apparently, that are listening to this, for free.
Well, that's the thing. If this is just a small taste of what Nicola can offer, so if you're intrigued by what you hear today, do reach out, not in a capacity as a listener of the podcast, but as a potential client of Nicola's. However, here we go. Here's what I've got to figure out. We can't decide what to do. It's in July, right? We have 3 issues that I see which are making it difficult. Number one is that, and aware this is very much a first world problem, but I feel as though I have seen essentially everything in Europe, or at least there's nothing left in Europe that's going to completely blow my mind that I haven't already seen in some way, which is a shame. And as I say, massive first world problem, but still that does make me less enthusiastic about going to anywhere, let's say in South Europe, even Central or Western Europe. I feel kind of like, it'll be how it is, So that's one thing that's keeping the excitement levels a bit low about staying in Europe for this holiday. Number two is that long haul flights at this point, now that I've left it so late, are also a bit out of the question. Like we've
Mm.
looked at what about going east, what about going west, and it is just it was very good about a month ago. You could get really good deals, but these days now it's at that crazy price where you're talking €1,000 or so to get anywhere continental. So yeah, we're kind of ruling that out also, it
Uh-huh.
seems. And then the third issue is that staycations, i.e., staying in Denmark where we live and doing something here or in Scandinavia, let's say within driving or train distance, we've kind of had mixed experiences of where, we've
Right.
ended up in summer houses and stuff where it's like, yeah, I mean, is it really a holiday? Do you really get a chance to fully disconnect, or are you actually just kind of taking a long weekend, So these are the three issues I face. So my first question to you is, what the hell do we do?
Wow. So basically, what you've thrown at me, Neil, and these are the best type of clients, right? Because they come to you with a bunch of unsolvable problems and
Yes.
they remain unhappy in the end. No. So you've told me, Neil, you've seen all of Europe. You don't want to go to Europe, but you've procrastinated so much. And I don't blame you for that. If you had a travel advisor on your side from earlier on, maybe
Mm.
you wouldn't have. But you've procrastinated so much that now it's not feasible to go outside of Europe, essentially. You say long haul flight, but continental, right? So
Hmm.
we're in a bit of a conundrum. We're in a bit
We
of a
are.
conundrum because, as you say, the staycation, you've done quite a bit of it. It's been mixed. Nordic summer, you could make the argument, is cooler than Southern Europe. You don't even need to make that argument. That's facts. But that
Hmm.
also means you could be wearing a fleece in July, or unable to swim in whatever water is close to you because the temperature is too cold. So that's throwing a bit of spanner in the works. I'm taking out my map here, Neil.
Scrolling furiously.
I'm taking out my
Yeah.
map, my Google Maps, and I'm thinking, I think first off, good call. Southern Europe in the summer. I mean, if you can steer clear, to be honest, Southern Europe, I mean, do May, do September, do October even, but I'm not even talking so much about the heat. I'm talking about the crowds, right?
Exactly. And actually, this is a big point we'll come back to when we talk about the trends within travel for 2024, because one of the big ones is called shoulder season traveling, which is a
Yes,
phrase I
that's
learned today.
I can confirm that.
And that's exactly what you just described, where people are saying not just because of the prices or the heat, but also the crowds, where who wants to be in Rome in July? Like that's just asking for trouble, right?
In every sense, right? And crowds in heat, people sweating on you. Not ideal. Not ideal. So
Exactly.
I'm thinking, can we kind of hybrid this to something that is extra continental, let's say intercontinental, but not too long haul of a flight? When we're talking starting long hauls, let's say at around 7 hours. So let's say we're not going to have anything transatlantic at this stage,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Because it's
Yeah.
going to be almost extortionate. I mean, we're recording at the end of June. Just listener, just so we're recording at the end of June, and this guy wants to go on holiday in a couple of weeks.
I left it pretty late. Yeah.
He left it pretty late. That's okay. Now, if I remember a few things, and this is what you always have to keep on file, right, as a travel advisor, is people's profiles. Last summer, my friend, and you shared this on the podcast, so our loyal listeners will remember, you and Yura took a holiday to Singapore and to Bali in Indonesia.
Correct. I was actually there this time last year. Yeah.
Indeed, indeed. Came back with a lot of postulations for the podcast. That was all good and great. If I recall, quite good fans of Singapore. Bali, as I tried to preempt, a disappointment.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I kind of knew myself what I was going in for, but sometimes you just want to see yourself.
You got to. And I appreciate that, wanting the lived experience. So the other dynamic I remember about your guys' relationship, Yura is one that is able actually to sit on a beach for 10 days to 2 weeks, chill,
Hmm.
relax, recharge, get all her vitamins from that. Whereas you, my friend, you get a little antsy after
Hmm.
48 hours on the beach, correct?
If even 48, yeah, you might be talking one day before I start to think, okay, tomorrow we got to shake things up. This is, it's pretty bad.
I got you. I got you. So, what if it's always going to be a hybrid holiday with you guys where we combine? I know you're a big city trip guy.
Hmm.
I know having an adventure component can kind of interest both of you. And then, of course, if
Yeah.
we can have also some relaxation, which I know Yura will thank me for throwing that in. And the city part, I think, for you guys is important because you are a couple that listeners will find this fascinating. In almost every city they visit, ends up in an escape room.
Yeah, it's been a while since we did that actually. I haven't done one this year, but we are famously, I mean, when we went to Budapest, we did two, I think, and as well as doing one in Japan, in Tokyo, and I think we did one in Bangkok as well. So yeah, we've been racking them up actually. Yeah.
So again, looking at my map,
Hmm.
and an idea is starting to form, Neil. An idea is starting to
Okay.
form. Have you ever heard? It's technically Europe, but it's a bit a longer flight from Copenhagen. We're talking maybe around 5 hours. The island of Madeira in Portugal.
Yeah, this came up. This has been on our short list,
Mm.
Madeira, and it's very high on our list actually because you get that combination of adventure, hiking, trails, good weather, relaxation, etc. However, when you look into the flight situation, it isn't amazing. We're talking either indirect flights via Lisbon or London, I think it is, or something like that. But then also cost wise, good old leaving it at the last minute. It's pretty high. It's pretty up there. Now, should I just bite the bullet and pay? Maybe. Maybe it's my own fault and I should just make the best of a bad situation. Who knows?
I think that the trade off also to consider is your daily cost of living when
Mm,
you're in
mm.
a place like Portugal versus, let's say, if you were planning on actually doing the holiday at a summer house in Denmark.
Yeah,
Even
true.
if you take houses in both, your daily cost of the groceries is going to be exponentially higher in Denmark. So if you look at total cost, of living from the thing, barring the sunk costs of flights,
Mm,
keeping in mind that I do know we have Norwegian airline. I'm getting very detailed here. Norwegian Airlines
mm.
flies direct to Funchal once a
Okay.
week from Copenhagen Airport on
So maybe
Saturdays,
it's
I
the
believe.
dates.
Yeah,
Yeah, see, that's the thing because I probably punched in the dates that we were looking at, a Monday to Monday kind of deal,
for example.
and that might have been what took us wrong. So yeah, maybe I'll do a second check on Madeira. That sounds like a winner
So
actually.
that's an example, right? Because you have the water. It is much more temperate than other parts of South Europe and even the Canary Islands below it, right?
Mm,
And you got some of the most phenomenal hiking you can have within, let's say, a 5 hour flight of the continent, right? And it's only 5 hours
yeah,
for us because we're almost at the North Pole, right? I mean, if you're
yeah,
from
yeah.
Central Europe, this isn't going to be as sticky of a situation. So I think that's an
Nice.
option. But honestly, we kind of like, in terms of southernness, unless we switch hemispheres, which then starts to
Mm,
become a very long haul flight, we
hmm.
can't really get into that African corridor because the north of it
No,
is already 40 degrees Celsius in April, for example, in Egypt.
I mean, we're just getting closer to the Sahara as we go south, and I feel like that's for my Irish skin not the best idea. Also, though, we love direct flights as a specific
Who
convenience,
doesn't?
and I don't think there's anywhere in Africa you can get with a direct, or at least very, very rarely. I think the majority you'll be going via Germany or somewhere else. But yeah, if we can avoid that, we will.
Especially from Copenhagen. Unfortunately, we're not so great on those intercontinentals, but I would say Madeira
Yep.
is a shout. Their sister islands further, but then we might get into the no direct flight territory. Further to the west of the Azores are
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
even maybe slightly more luxurious in a way, but a similar experience in terms of what you're looking for. But there you're in the middle of the
Nice.
Atlantic. So you
Yeah.
could be there for 2 weeks and end up having an Atlantic Ocean storm where you're not able to do anything.
Exactly. It's tricky, but you know what? I'll just be happy to be away and doing something else. I think that'll be nice no matter what.
That will be
Actually,
nice.
I think so. And this already is an amazing help and a great preview of what you can offer all of the listeners. Actually, now that I think of it, but it's striking to me that it's actually not so much about your expertise of what's out there. What makes a good travel advisor is your expertise of the client, right? Of like knowing what it is that we want specifically.
It's
That's pretty interesting.
because it's all about doing something tailor made, right? It's personalizing it to their taste. So I could organize 4 trips to Madeira, even for clients within the same demographic, and all those 4 trips would be completely different, because you in Europe, for example, might want a bit more of a foodie experience. And then the next ones, to
Mm.
use postulatory concepts, might be more of eat to live people. And so I'm
Yeah.
not going to prioritize necessarily their budget there. Maybe I'm going to prioritize it more on the zip lining excursions or experiences or whatnot. So
Nice. Nice,
it
nice.
is about personalizing. And then I was just thinking, as a potential alternative is,
Mm.
you love direct flights, but what if we would have a multi-stop journey, but a multi-stop
Mm.
journey that is more, has a bit of a slight off ramp for a few days, right? So
Mm. Yeah.
um, if we were to split, and now I'm spitballing the locations, but because I know those can be actually something a bit different for the summer. If we were to say a trip to Canada, maybe not far west to British Columbia, but a bit, closer to home in Quebec or Ontario or whatnot, where we can also then have some city time, if it would be Ontario, Toronto, or
Mm.
Quebec and Montreal, but then all the nature that I know you love. But what if we were to take advantage of what our friends at Icelandair offer, for example,
Exactly.
which is the
Exactly.
stopover from Copenhagen to Reykjavik, where you get 24 hours essentially for free in the city. I know you've been there, but maybe we tack on, we make that a 2-night thing. You've cut
Mm.
the trip intercontinental in half, and you're just a short hop over to Canada. With the time difference in your favor, you're not losing any days to go there.
That's pretty good. And then you just have a whopper flight back and a bit of a recovery on the other end. But hey, we good?
Hello? You're muted?
Yep. No? Can you
Hello?
hear me?
You're muted and your video is off.
Uh-oh. Any good? No?
You're back. You're back. Whopper flight
Okay.
recover.
Yeah, exactly. Cool, cool, cool. Uh, it was weird. It didn't drop on my side, but I guess it went off. Yeah, okay. Cool, cool. Yeah, so then the only issue is that you have that massive flight back and then the hangover of the jet lag that follows that. But hey, maybe it's worth it. Maybe it is worth it.
Maybe it is worth it. I mean, within the constraints, I think those are some of the options to look at. And then, I mean, I don't know how much you guys are into this road tripping kind of extravaganza, right? But that's
Mm,
that's always an option. You can, what I found out living in Scandinavia is that it is a big place with a lot to offer also in terms of nature, where one could in theory take the ferry from Copenhagen to Oslo and then begin a Norwegian adventure where you have the best nature probably in
that's
all the
true.
Nordics. But last minute there is even more expensive than usual. I mean, a normal Wednesday night at a restaurant in Norway is already half a year's budget in some places. So
True.
that's one thing.
It's an option. I've always struggled a bit with the driving part where, if I'm going to be spending a big chunk of the holiday driving, which I think because I'm not a daily driver, I do find that a little bit more stressful than average. I probably would avoid it if I could. But
Yeah.
we'll think about it. I think that there's a new Michelin restaurant off the coast,
Look at you.
off the yeah, off the western coast of where's the nearest city in Norway? Not sure actually. It's somewhere anyway. It opened last year. Iris, I think it's called. That
Okay.
maybe it's worth a little bit of a trek out there.
Could be a
Who knows?
journey. And last dark horse, hot right now. I have clients going there in August actually for 10 days. Scotland.
Oh, really?
The Scottish Highlands, my
Interesting.
friend. Trips.
Yeah.
You start in Edinburgh, you work your way up to the Isle of Skye, you do some hiking, you do some kayaking. No matter what, it won't be steaming hot.
Mm.
Very like adventurous type of trip. People are enjoying it. That's a dark horse.
Could be. Could be. I mean, I love Edinburgh, and it's almost like I could go for the Fringe, but then I would have to go in August. That's the only problem. Yeah, a bit too early if I go in July. But yeah, the Fringe Festival, amazing times. But hey, we've got plenty of options here, and what an amazing example of the good consultative work that you do as a travel advisor. But it actually brings me on to the topic I was hoping to explore with you a bit, and maybe get your yes or no on whether these really are trends that we have seen in 2024.
Mm.
At least from your side, because this is from a website called roadbook.com, who update this list quite regularly, and most recently they updated it last week with some of the big trends that are happening in tourism. So I have a few of them here. Let's say I have 8 in total, and we'll jump through them, and let's stop on any that you think are kind of interesting or you think are worth discussing. Some of them are kind of, they go without saying, right? But let's see. So number one, what they've said is domestic tourism staying hot. So that's something brought about by cost of living issues, but I suppose still also a sustainability argument to be made for staying close to home. Do you see your clients asking for that more and more, or is this less of a thing?
Yeah, you do see it, especially in big countries that have a lot to offer. That's where you can make the argument, where there's a lot of diversity within a country. So, most obvious thing is the US, of course, right? Because you can be on a domestic flight for 7 hours within the US, which is what it takes us to get to New York, right? But
Yeah.
at the same time, I think what people are starting to open their eyes to a lot is we have smaller countries in Europe, maybe not as small as Denmark, but if you take an Italy, for example, where you can have very different types of experiences, whether you're up in the Northeast, close to Austria, in the mountains hiking in the summer, or you're down in Sicily lounging on a beach and eating totally different food than you would have there. So I do think the pandemic has kind of brought that about, not necessarily in this like staycation type of way, but in this, hey, actually, depth over breadth. And we're also
Mm.
moving away, I think, from this cliche, I need to tick countries off my list, which never made any sense to me other than like a little ego boost, which then was just for you because nobody else really cared how many countries you went to.
Exactly. It's a great point. It's quality over quantity as well as depth over breadth, right?
Indeed.
And then a second one, road trips and outdoor adventures. So I think very much on trend with what you were talking about, how people are looking at just packing up the car and seeing where it can take them, right?
Yeah, a lot of that. Also with campers, there's also been a lot of companies that have taken advantage of this and turned it into like luxury experiences where you are road tripping, but you're staying in phenomenal places. Your bags are being forwarded. All these types of things. My only note on that is a lot of people end up planning one big road trip and never doing it again, and that's because to a large extent we have over romanticized the road trip. It's
I've heard, yeah,
yeah.
I've heard a lot of mixed reviews, right? Like people who say they do Highway 1 or like these like massive
Right.
uh, cross the US trips. And then honestly, they come back and they're like, wouldn't do it again.
No,
You know, it's like, it was a lot of just sitting and looking at nothing.
exactly.
Yeah.
Especially in big countries, like you're going to go hours on end without really seeing much. And it's not going to be as fun as when you were doing it as an 18, 19-year-old with your buddies, basically.
Yeah, yeah. Can't recreate it. Can't recreate the interrailing buzz as well, sadly.
No.
But
Only on the
maybe that's for
podcast.
the best. Yeah, yeah, maybe that's for the best. But another one is tactile moments. Now, what they're getting at here is there was a big increase in contactless tourism, right? Where you could come to a hotel and be greeted not by a receptionist, but by just a screen. And you would tap, tap, tap and get your key and off you go. And what some of the industry insiders are saying is that that's actually rubbing travelers the wrong way. And funny enough, travelers are responding really, really positively to a warm cookie and a firm handshake when they actually get to the hotel. Do you see anything like this?
I see that. It's the small things in terms of the experience that count. So, for example, for me, a big differentiator is how can you have those small things ready in the hotel when they arrive that make the clients feel special? And coming up to a screen, especially having come out of years of a pandemic staring at screens, although, your automation nerds might get very excited about it, the average person, for them, the holiday once a year, they want everything, they want to feel special. And oftentimes with the automation, we're also not there yet where there won't be an issue and someone won't have to come out of the boiler room in the back to help you, right? So
Exactly.
if you can crack the code though between that automation and still making the people feel special, I'm all for it, but we're not there yet.
It does strike me though as a bit of a Black Mirror tightrope situation where people want customized, they want personalized in some way, right? They want to feel special, but at the same time, nobody wants the hotel to look them up on social media and be like, "Well, we saw that you love, hiking, so we prepared this trail." Because that would be like, "Hold on, sorry, don't look at my
Right.
social." You know,
Right.
it's an interesting balance for sure, and I don't know where I fall on it. I do appreciate. I was at a hotel in Berlin a couple of weeks ago where we did the whole check-in process, me and the lady, let's say, behind the desk. So then at the very end of it, it was all going very normally. And then she takes the key, walks out from behind the desk and comes around and then goes, here you go, here's the key. And I guess this was something she's been trained to do or something. It didn't do what it was supposed to, because I just felt like, thank you. You can just give it to me over the desk.
Oh,
I
man.
guess. But yeah, I guess it's something they're being measured on. Like they have to do it. And I guess some travelers respond super well to it. It feels almost Japanese in its level of courtesy.
Right.
But yeah, that happened. And I'm seeing it more and more when I travel as well.
And there's a big, I think, in the hospitality industry and in general in services, there should be also when we're out at restaurants, a notion of reading the room. Does
Yeah.
this client want me to pour a water for them or not? How can I get a read on that? Because you would have been super creeped out by the key thing compared to somebody else that would have been like, oh wow, she did it just for me. Oh, I'm coming back to this hotel because of that, right? And then just that small gesture may have gotten them a returning client back.
Exactly. It's interesting. That particular one, though, I feel nobody would have responded super well. Like it was awkward. It was just like
Sounds like it.
forced. If maybe it was the way she did it or something, but it just didn't land. But anyway, still, we agree that tactile moments and moments of personalization are here to stay and probably grow in 2024. Here's one for you that you referenced earlier on. I didn't call it out though when you said it. I've seen this described online as destination dupes, right? Which is such an American way to phrase it. What they mean is the duplicative or clone destinations. And the example they give is, hey, don't go to Santorini, go to Paros, right? Because it does all of the things that Santorini does, and nobody's going to be there, or it's going to be way, way less crowded, right? And you talked about it as well there, where you were saying, hey, instead of going to Madeira, why not go to Ponta Delgada or like, I don't know, one of the other islands off the side, right? Are you seeing this as well though, where people are kind of going for travel hacks where they're saying, okay, I'm not going to go, in fact, let's say I'm not going to go to Florence, I'm going to go to Bologna instead, like picking the less popular cousin of the destination?
I say yes. I think a lot of smart travelers are doing it to an extent. It's not happening enough though to where I would say it's a trend and no longer a viable strategy. So those ones doing it are still benefiting greatly from it because that approach is strongly outweighed by I saw this picture on Instagram. I'm going on holiday there. I don't care if the experience is horrible. I'm getting my Instagram content out of it. That is still the prevalent mentality, I think, especially for our generation, for the one under us, even more. And so those ones acknowledging, hey, the dupes and I can actually get a better experience are still benefiting from it. And then I think, again, look, depth over breadth, again, also on this point.
It's a great point. I think I'm kind of there myself. If I could find, that little undiscovered gem and be treated not like a tourist, but just as some guy, when I'm in this place, I think that would really help my enjoyment in general when I travel.
Absolutely.
I do. We've talked about before how if there's one thing I really hate, it's being treated like a goddamn tourist.
At the Colosseum, under the sun, having forgotten your sun cream, turning into a lobster.
Love it, yeah. Or on the mean streets of Bali, being shouted at every 10 meters by everyone who drives a vehicle, asking if I need a lift. I don't.
Because you're a VTP, and they see your long legs, and they say he shouldn't be having to use those so much.
They certainly want to relieve me of my long legs walking around, that's for sure. But that was destination dupes. I have another interesting one that I am seeing myself more and more, and that is, drum roll please, bleisure. Have you heard about bleisure travel? No?
Something with
bleisure.
Business and leisure combining. Right?
Yeah, exactly. So again, I think it comes back to the stretched budgets or cost of living thing, but people are traveling for work now post-COVID more and more, as they have every right to do. But people are stretching those dates out, and they're checking in with their work and saying, hey, can I fly back on Sunday rather than Friday, and making a weekend of it. And in many cases, I think workplaces are happy to just say, yeah, go for it. I mean, the cost is the same or less in some cases. And hey, you knock yourself out. So is that something we're seeing more and more of? Do you do this also?
Yes, I do. Yes, we are seeing more of it. Yes, I'm a big fan of it. Also from an employer perspective, because honestly, it's a win-win. You're not having to give much up, and you're getting engagement brownie points from whoever's working for you. I mean, I'm also, Maria and I are to a large extent now in our new life in a few months, daycare permitting, a bit of pseudo digital nomads, right? So of course you're always going to find me in favor of of such arrangements. I think there is also, like, I don't want to stress this too much, but there is a positive environmental aspect that if you're going to take those flights anyways, at least you're not doing it twice, once for the business trip and once for visiting the place. And I think it is a trend because it's something that really came about with our generation. Before us, you were even doing, multi-hour flights for one business trip and flying back in the same day. Our generation is more, hey, you know what, I'm gonna stay a couple extra nights, maybe even work the day from half a day from a coffee shop in this place on the Friday while I wait for my partner to join me, and then we're gonna take advantage of this travel, because a lot of the business travel, to a large extent, my own, yours, a lot of people's, 80% of it, just going there for a meeting doesn't make much sense. So you are getting a lot more value for your experience, and I'm a big fan of that.
All for it. I like it. I think it's great that workplaces are increasingly open to it as well. Like it's unimaginable to think even 10 years ago. I think you would have a very hard time getting approval for that kind of stuff, where they would say, I mean,
Yeah.
let's just keep it by the book here.
Right.
Don't do anything crazy, let alone working abroad or being a digital nomad." But anyway, it's an interesting one, which I think will continue to grow. And then the last one is one I mentioned earlier on when we were talking about my particular needs, which is again about shoulder season travel. And we're talking here about the kind of April, September vibes for sunny trips.
hmm
How about that?
This is huge. Also, a terminology that was not very well known till a few years ago, and I think with, especially in Europe, with just much more affordable flights. I'm talking relative to 30 years ago, right? With the low cost airlines and everything coming in, that high season has become ultra high, right? And so, what the logic of shoulder season permits is, let's say you don't have kids, you're not bound to the
Mm,
school calendar. Why would you necessarily go on holiday when everybody else in your country, as we have in Europe, does, in the same months, when you can experience that same place in better, less crowded conditions? Let's take an Italy or a Spain or a Greece, right? In Spain or May, instead of doing it in those summer months. I'm a big fan of shoulder season. We prioritize shoulder season whenever we travel,
yeah.
and there's an economic aspect as well. So I mean, if you go to, you want to do your big adventure in Patagonia, and instead of doing Christmas January, you choose just a slight shift to November or February, that's already shoulder season. You're still experiencing decent temperatures. You're doing all the activities without having to throw people off the ledge while you're on those hikes just to work your way up the mountain. And I think it's big. Again, it's something that is a trend, but it's not a trend that everyone can get in on, because a lot of people are
Mm,
bound to those other parts of the year. So if you can take advantage of it, I push shoulder season to my clients, even though I know that it might be less lucrative for me
mm.
on the top line. What I know is I'm going to provide them with a much better experience in shoulder season, and they're much more likely to be a returning client as a result.
Nice, nice. Playing the long game. Love it. So that takes me to the end of my little list of trends. And I was wanting to do a little recap and see, of these, which one are you most likely to put your money on and go all in on as the big trend, right? So to recap, we talked about domestic tourism. We talked about road trips. We talked about tactile moments. We talked about destination dupes. I really don't like that phrase. I need a better, like, let's say clone destinations. I like that better.
Okay.
And then pleasure travel. And then finally, and did I say tactile
Yeah.
moments and shoulder season? Yeah. So that's the list. Do any of those jump out as the big one, the one that you want to put your money
So
behind?
as much as I love pleasure, or plaisir, if we were to, I guess, use the French, which I've just made up, and as much as I
Nice.
love shoulder season and see it in action, I think the biggest one, because it's all encompassing, you can apply it to so many different things, is tactile moments. I think
Yeah.
that's ultimately what people are going. You just need to think how many times you've been to great places that are beautiful and this and all of that, the service being off for a couple of the days, ruining your entire experience. The you
Mm.
feeling like a herd of cows all in the same resort, fighting for towels over something. that's not what you're going for. That can ruin an entire holiday. Whereas, tactile moments is the response to that. And again, I think it's something that from an industry perspective, people are willing to splurge a little bit more on, because they're becoming more and more aware that, especially with travel, up to a point, you get what you pay for.
Yeah. More and more. I think we talked about it before as well. There's a you get what you pay for scale where it proceeds in a linear fashion and then massively drops off at a
Yes,
certain
sir.
point, where kind of just when luxury starts to kick in, and then you have the risk of it being a kind of a scam, basically, where they're charging the highest possible figure for the lowest possible service. But until that point, there is a really good return on, like, just let me spend that little bit more and unlock that little bit extra. Which I'd be always happy to do if I was sure that it wasn't a scam.
Exactly. And I think, like, the big thing is, don't put all the burden on yourself of trying to figure out where that exact threshold is of the scam or not. People, get help. It doesn't have to be me. It doesn't have to be a travel advisor, but reach out to whatever resources you have when planning a trip. Ask what you think might be the stupid questions, and it will be worthwhile. Just like when you're in a cab from the airport to whatever nice hotel you're going to, strike up a conversation with the cabbie. You're going to get some great stories no matter what. You may disagree with most of the things they say, but those are the type of lived experiences that give you an experience when you come home that you can talk about, that's different from all the other people that have also been to that exact same location and maybe even same hotel.
I mean, you had that, I can't remember where it was, but I think it was on your honeymoon or mini moon, right? Where you had that exact scenario where it was kind of the taxi driver became the tour guide for you for that whole trip.
Exactly. You fall into these situations, and I mean, I go even a little out of my way to talk so I can write a bit about my trips, but it's that's where you live it. You go from I'm on vacation, just secluded, to living it. Small things, and that's tactile moments the other way around.
Phenomenal. Well, I think we have covered some fantastic ground here today on our travel postulation, Lost in Perambulation,
I love it.
as I'm calling any travel related segment. But a massive thank you to our travel consultant for today, Nicola Volpe. Do you have any parting shots that you want to leave the listener with regarding travel or regarding anything at all?
Listeners, keep traveling, keep postulating. The best way to sharpen your postulatory skill set is actually to travel. The travel does not have to be transcontinental. It can be, an hour down the road. Traveling, listeners, perambulation, if you will, is a mindset.
It's about the
I'm
journey.
going to let that
Yeah.
sit. I'm going to let that sit. I'm going to let you all ruminate on that. This was Lost in Perambulation, an LIP production, all organized by the great Neil Fitzpatrick. And we both bid you farewell. Happy travels this summer. So long.